Don't forget, we do have a test next week. It is a week from Friday. So you don't have to come back to class again this week. So this being a day, you actually won't come back until Wednesday because of the holiday and everything. But anyway, so after today, the next class period is, I'll give you the study guide, which is posted on the class wall if you're interested. So you can start looking at that, but I will have a hard copy for you next class. And then the following class will be the test.
So Friday will be the test.
Yes.
Um,
Well, yeah, you don't have school on Monday, so you're not going to get Monday and Friday off.
I know you really think that's a thing. But
If you can show me a week on the calendar
I bet I could.
that has a Monday and a Friday off, I will give you 50 extra credit points.
Ooh, I need those. Watch. I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna need a Monday and a Friday. You call from you can do it by me. Chemistry, okay?
Or maybe you can make yourself not going to school.
Yeah. Yeah. One week I just won't come to school. And
Because you don't come doesn't mean that there's no school.
well,
Once again, I said, show me on the calendar, not.
I'm gonna do it. I'm really gonna do it.
So, anyway, don't forget about that because, well, the test is going to come whether you're ready for it or not. So. Now, we don't have new material today.
Yeah.
I know, very, very sad that you don't get to learn new stuff.
Another video of this.
It's not a video. It's not a video. We are going to discuss something. Okay. In fact, the opposite. So after the test, we're going to start into acids and bases, and that's going to be the first time that we really get into the lab. So we need to talk about lab safety.
Oh, and then it like don't mess around.
It's essentially a lot of that.
I don't. I'm stupid. Wear your goggles. Yeah. What?
So here we have the student safety contract.
So we signed a contract early on in the year and just realized when we were ambassadors that we actually had to do it. We didn't read it all the way through.
I did.
Now that's a life lesson right there. Don't sign things that you didn't read.
This stuff, but I was like,
I
I
did.
feel like I'm safe here, and then they're like, you have to come to the video. I'm not safe.
Like
Do not read it. It's like all the minutes.
the whole whenever you download a new app on your phone and you agree to the terms and conditions. Yeah.
I would. No.
In fact, there was one company that knew nobody was reading those, so they put sort of, it's almost like an Easter egg, and it said, if you actually read this, contact this person, and they had a prize for them.
What? Oh. What? I would have done that.
You want to find
Read your terms and conditions. So,
especially the doctor's office.
anyway, I'm gonna hand these out to you.
You have to check the doctors in 2 years.
Yeah. My mom says, always says, I mean, the one that he wants to forget. Are we reading this whole
I'm just gonna
thing?
sign it.
Oh, wait.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this. Now, this is from Flynn Scientific, and it does address a couple things that don't really apply to this class. And that's just fine. We're going to go through, we're going to hit some of the important ones. And yeah. Anyway, if you notice front page, it starts with general rules. So we're going to start going over some of the general rules for being in the lab. Okay, now, I just want to mention, I do take lab safety pretty seriously. There are things in the lab that can absolutely hurt you in a very permanent manner. Okay. And in all of my years of being a chemistry teacher, we've never had a serious accident in one of my labs. I'd like to keep it that way. Okay? Don't be the reason we have to call 911.
Oh.
Okay. So, yeah. So start with general rules. Conduct yourself in a responsible manner at all times in the laboratory. Okay. Yes, the lab is meant to be, fun. I don't know many people who would rather sit and listen to a teacher talk instead of actually going and doing something. All right. But that being said, it's not a playground. Okay. Follow all written and verbal instructions carefully. If you do not understand a direction or part of a procedure, ask the instructor before proceeding. Okay? If you don't know what you're mixing, don't mix it. Okay? It's absolutely possible to mix things that will release vapors that are no good. Okay? So if you don't know what you're doing, don't do anything. Never work alone. No student may work in the laboratory without an instructor present. That's why I keep the lab locked. So, yeah. When first entering a science room, do not touch any equipment. Okay? Do not touch any equipment, chemicals, or other materials in the lab area until you are instructed to do so. The fact is, I normally will try and set things up ahead of time. If you come in and start touching them and moving them, then that is going to be creating more work for you. Okay? So when you come in, just wait until we're ready to go. Do not eat food, drink beverages, or chew gum in the laboratory. Okay? Now, technically that's a rule for, the whole school. You're not supposed to be, eating upstairs. You're not supposed to be chewing gum ever. And yeah, I can tell many people do chew gum and eat.
No.
Yeah, no.
But we can't do that in the lab. Okay, no food or drink. The biggest problem is if you're drinking. If you're not paying attention, you might grab the wrong thing, and you might drink something that can hurt you. That's why it also says don't use laboratory glassware as containers for food or beverages.
What? Who would do that?
I mean,
Well, I don't
it's,
know, I feel like Mr. White and I am, he's got us like pencils and everything.
yeah, but I don't drink out of beakers. I mean, I can understand that there are some people who want to, look cool and sciencey, so they're drinking out of a beaker.
What?
It's just not a good idea. Number one, if that beaker's ever been in the lab, we don't know what was in it before. Okay?
Yeah.
And even if you washed it, okay. Also, it's just bad habits, because if you get used to drinking out of beakers, then you might want to grab a beaker while you're in the lab and drink, which is not good. So, also chewing gum, vapors can get stuck in the gum, and then you're chewing on those chemicals instead of just gum. So, yeah, chewing gum is not good. Let's see, now we're on 6. Perform only those experiments authorized by the instructor. Never do anything in the laboratory that is not called for in the laboratory procedures or by your instructor. Carefully follow all instructions, both written and oral. Unauthorized experiments are prohibited. Once again, don't just start randomly mixing things. That's when accidents happen. This is a big one. Be prepared for your work in the laboratory. Read all procedures thoroughly before entering the laboratory. We will never go to the lab unless I have already told you what we're going to do in the lab. Okay? The class period before we go to the lab, I will give you all of the instructions and we will go over them. There's a couple reasons why we need to do it ahead of time. Number one, it saves time when we get into the lab. Okay? We've got an hour. We've got an hour to get down there, get going, and clean up. Okay? You don't want to take 10 minutes of that hour reading through the instructions, trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. Also, it helps keep things safe because, well, if you know what you're supposed to be doing, then you can do that and only that. Never fool around in the laboratory. Horseplay, practical jokes, and pranks are dangerous and prohibited. Okay? I know that you guys like to joke around with each other, but the lab is not where we want to do that. So, good housekeeping practices, basically keep things organized and only bring what you need. Okay, you're going to leave your bags here. Basically, you're going to bring your instructions and something to write with. Other than that, you don't need anything. Okay. Keep the aisles clear. Push your chair under the desk when you're not in use. We don't have chairs in there so much. We do have some stools. I tend to keep them stacked on the side. If you want to pull one out during an experiment, that's okay. But please put it back. Okay? The thing about the lab is that because it is an area where an accident could happen, where we need to be able to get in and out quickly, we need to not have stuff in the way, basically. Know the locations and operating procedures of all safety equipment, including the first aid kit, eye wash station, safety shower, fire extinguisher, and fire blanket. Know where the fire alarm and exits are located. So when we go in, I will point out the different things to you. We do have an emergency eye wash. Let's hope we never have to use it. It's not fun. Okay? If you need any more evidence of that, I can show you basically what it does. But it's like, well, let me draw. So the way it works, you've got this water tube that comes up, and then there's a handle, and it has two things with like a shower head, and water is going to spray out like that. And you hold it in your face with your eyes open
No.
for at least 20 minutes.
Oh, no. That'd be fun. What? It sounds really fun. Oh.
It's cold water, and you will get soaked. Okay? You don't want to do it. Okay?
Wait, but how do you, like, what do you have to do to get it? Like,
Wendy!
You splash chemicals in your eye.
oh, okay.
Now, it's also like if somehow you get chemicals all over you,
Perfect.
you can grab this
It's
and
like-
pull it off, and you can shower yourself.
Great.
Like I said, I've never had somebody that had to use this in the lab.
What's with your hand sanitizer around?
I probably wouldn't say use that for hand sanitizer. I'd say if it was just a small amount, I'd say let your tears do it. But if somebody like, well, yeah, that's what your tears are for. I mean, there's a reason why your eyes water when you get stuff in them, because that's how your body works. Anyway, over here by where the water tube attaches, there's a paddle, probably about that big or so. You put your hand on it and push it forward, and that turns on the water. You don't want to have to fiddle for knobs if you can't see. So there's a
That's
big
true.
thing that you just push. And it'll stay on. Like you don't have to hold it. You push it forward and it stays on.
How do you turn it off?
You pull the thing back. Always work in a well-ventilated area. Use the fume hood when working with volatile substances or poisonous vapors.
What?
Never place your head into the fume hood. We do have a fume hood. I think you guys have all been in the lab at some point, right? Okay. Do you know what the fume hood is?
Is this a clear box?
It's that big box right on when you open the door. It's right there on the left. The way that works is you turn it on, and it has a fan that draws air out, and
Is it a vacuum?
pretty much. And it draws air up and out of the building, where it will dissipate and not hurt people. Yeah, because once it dissipates, poison is all about dose. And so if we can get it mixing with all the rest of the air, you'll be fine. Also, we're not going to work with anything that's truly that toxic. So. Be alert and proceed with caution at all times in the laboratory. Notify the instructor immediately of any unsafe conditions you observe. If you see something that doesn't look safe, let me know so that we can address it. Okay. Dispose of all chemical waste properly. Never mix chemicals in sink drains. Sinks are to be used only for water and those solutions designated by the instructor. So when we're done with stuff, don't just pour it down the drain. We have to dispose of things properly. Okay, I will, with every lab, I will tell you what to do with your waste and where to put it, and then I will take care of it. So. Labels and equipment instructions must be read carefully before use. Okay, any sort of equipment, make sure you understand how to use it. I will teach you how to use these things. So, keep hands away from face, eyes, mouth, and body while using chemicals or preserved specimens. Wash your hands with soap and water after performing all experiments. Okay. Clean all work surfaces and apparatus at the end of the experiment. Return all equipment clean and in working order. When you go to the lab, I will give you points for your behavior in the lab, essentially. And part of those points are, did you clean up after yourself? Because if you don't clean up after yourself, then I have to clean up after you. And I don't want to. Okay. Also, once again, as you're working with bottles, a lot of times chemicals will sort of be on the outside just as you pour, and then it drips down a little bit. And so they tend to get on your hands. So if you do this and then you start chewing on your nails,
Ew.
all of those chemicals are now in your mouth. Okay, that's not what you want. And wash your hands before leaving, okay? Because this is, let's say right after this, you go home and have a snack. Well, guess what? If the chemicals are still on your hands, now they're on your food. So, experiments must be personally monitored at all times, okay? You will have something to work with, and it's your job to be watching it. Okay, you don't start an experiment and then walk away. Luckily, nothing that we do takes that long. When I was in college, I had an organic chemistry lab where on a regular basis, the instructions said, okay, mix everything up and then start heating them so they'll boil and then allow them to boil for 90 minutes. So I got to sit there and watch it boil for 90 minutes. It was quite boring. We won't have anything like that. So we'll skip 18 because once again, I keep the lab locked. Know what to do if there's a fire drill during the lab period. Okay, there is
No, not fire.
there's a very small likelihood of a fire drill happening during the lab because our school almost never does fire drills. But all of the rooms do have the evacuation plan. Basically, you'd go down the west stairway.
Okay.
It's the one closest to the front entrance. If we had a fire drill, if we're using gas or anything like that, we'd calmly and quickly turn all of that off. But once again, the odds of actually having a fire drill are very low. We are not going to be using living organisms in this class. I'm not going to be doing any animal experimentation. So we can skip 20. Also, for chemistry, we don't tend to use the knives. You guys were in life science last year. Remember, we got to cut it from makes around. But yeah. If you have any sort of medical condition like allergies or pregnancy,
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're not pregnant.
check with your physician prior to working in the lab. So
We didn't have to live with doctors in 3 years.
anyway, if you have anything that you're concerned about, okay, let's move on to clothing. Anytime chemicals, heat, or glassware are used, students will wear laboratory goggles. There will be no exceptions to this rule. Okay? You will need to wear goggles. Are they comfortable? No.
No, they're not.
No.
No, they're not. But is it better than using this thing? Yes.
That's true.
Okay. You would much rather have a pair of uncomfortable goggles that get splashed than to have to use this for 20 minutes. Okay. Contact lenses should not be worn in the laboratory unless you have permission from your instructor. If you normally wear contacts, if you have glasses, it's preferable to wear them in the lab. I'm not going to say you have to wear glasses because I know some people, like their prescription is out of date or whatever. But let me know, because if we have to do this, that's an extra step because we need to get them out.
That would be so weird. That would hurt.
Dress properly, okay? Long hair, dangling jewelry, and loose or baggy clothing are a hazard in the laboratory. So you all have to cut your long hair.
Wait,
You have to have it tied back.
I just heard cut and I was like, what?
No, you just have to have it tied back because if you lean over, you don't want it leaning into your stuff.
Get some like green hair or something. Dead hair.
Anyway, a lot of this really doesn't apply that much because we have a uniform here. Like no sandals are allowed.
Crazy hours when I sing it.
Yeah.
Actually,
Um, Lab aprons have been provided for your use. You don't have to wear them, but I do have lab coats in there
can we get our names on them?
Yeah.
if you want to buy your own.
Can I take them home and like embroider all their names?
Yeah.
But then what would we do next year?
Oh, they just choose like a random name.
Yeah, and
I'd be
we
like-
call them by that. So it'll be like, you'll be talking to like some kid and you'll be like, Phoebe, come here.
If you want to buy your own,
No, it's too
this
expensive.
company,
Well, that company, I looked on their website one time and I was like, I don't even know where we get the money for this. And then, no, oh, no, no.
let's see. Go to L.
Oh, it's literally like Easter egg.
Yeah, 'cause I wanna name that kid. So fun. Ooh, we could put like.
So you can buy a 100% cotton lab coat
I don't want polyester.
for $59.90.
$9.99.
What?
I'll be honest, that is pretty darn expensive for a lab coat.
My
You can get them
winter
much
coat
cheaper
was
other
less than
places.
that.
You can get them much cheaper other places. But if you would like this lovely tie-dyed coat,
Oh, I want it.
How much?
you can buy it pre-made for $78.70, or you
Is
can
there a kit?
buy a kit
Oh.
for $78. So you save 70 cents by doing it yourself.
Sure, sure. Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah, we're not.
I do have lab coats. You don't have to wear them, but it is possible that they could protect your clothing. When I was in college, I had a pair of jeans that they were the one pair of jeans that I always wore to the lab because they got chemicals on them, and so they had chemical burns,
Oh.
and so those are the ones that I wore to the lab so that I wouldn't ruin any other pairs. Accidents and injuries. Report any accident. If you spill something, break something, or an injury, cut yourself, burn yourself. So let me know. Even if it seems really minor, you just need to make sure that it actually is a minor thing. 28, I've always thought was really weird.
Yeah, I read that one.
It says if you or your lab partner are hurt, immediately yell out code 1, code 1.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What?
Um,
Code 1.
there's 4 of you. It won't be hard to get my attention.
Code
Okay.
1.
We'll be okay. So you don't need to remember code 1. Just say.
Yeah, Grace is gonna be like code 1.
So anyway. Oh, here we go. If a chemical splashes in your eyes or on your skin, immediately flush it with running water from the eye wash station or safety shower for at least 20 minutes.
Or at least. So, could I is it the equivalent to me just like standing in the shower with my eyeballs open?
Sort of, but these are going to be much closer and much colder.
It doesn't have anything in it. It's just water, right?
Oh, it's just tap water, yeah. Anyway, we don't have mercury thermometers, so don't worry about that. Handling chemicals. All chemicals in the lab are to be considered dangerous. Okay? Do not touch, taste, or smell any chemicals unless specifically instructed to do so. The proper technique for smelling chemical fumes will be demonstrated to you. That's exactly what it is.
I know.
So we'll pull out our pickle flask of fate.
Pickles. I forgot about
You forgot about this lovely thing?
No, he used it in our class.
It depends. Some classes I use it, sometimes I don't.
No, he already talked in my class.
Yeah. Anyway, so you don't just want to stick your nose right down in there because the fumes can overwhelm you. So it's called wafting. You do this. Okay. Anyway. Check the label on chemical bottles twice before removing any of the contents. Take only as much chemical as you need, and never return unused chemicals to their original containers. Once it leaves the container, you should consider it contaminated. Don't put it back. Okay. Never use mouth suction to fill a pipette.
What?
We don't have pipettes, so don't worry about that. Well, we do have pipettes, but they all have built-in bowls. So they're glass tubes, essentially, pipettes, and
They like suck up the stuff.
the proper technique is to use a bulb to, suction it
So
up.
there's these kids out
But
here like, with the straw.
Well, unfortunately, there's professional scientists that do it too. It's really terrible technique, though. But yeah, we have plastic ones with built-in bulbs, so don't worry about that. When transferring reagents from one container to another, hold the containers away from your body. So if you are, trying to pour acid, don't pour like this, okay? Because you'll spill on yourself, and that's a bad thing. Okay. I mean, usually what would happen is like you have something in this hand, and then you put something here, and you're trying to do that. And acids must be handled with extreme care.
Yeah.
You'll be shown the proper method for diluting strong acids. I'll never have you dilute strong acids, so don't worry about that. But the technique is adding acid to water. Okay, never add water to an acid. Flammable liquids, we're not going to really deal with many flammable liquids. So, yeah. Never remove chemicals or other materials from the lab area. Okay. Yeah, don't take stuff from the lab. Take great care when transporting acids and other chemicals from one part of the lab to another. Hold them securely and walk carefully. Okay. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty self-explanatory. Okay, now handling glassware and equipment. Okay. 40 we're going to skip because we don't use glass tubing. 41, never handle broken glass with your bare hands. Use a brush and dustpan to clean up broken glass. Okay. Sometimes things break in the lab. That's just the way it is. Okay. Try not to break things, obviously, but if they do, it's part of being in a lab. Okay. I'm not going to get mad at you.
You know how to
Just
pay for it.
let me know. A beaker is like $4. It's
What? In like 8th grade, somebody broke a beaker in my science class and had to pay like $40 for it.
Oh, that's because
Um,
probably one.
There was something
That's-
fishy going on.
yeah, that's a bit extreme.
Okay.
Unless it was a very, very specialized beaker. But yeah. Anyway. But yeah, just let me know. We've got a broom, we've got a dustpan, we'll get it cleaned up. Okay. Fill wash bottles only with distilled water and only use as intended. So a wash bottle, it's a plastic bottle and it has sort of a straw spout coming out, and so you can squeeze it and it sprays water. Number one, only put water in there because we assume that it's water in the wash bottle. Also, don't spray each other with it. Okay, you use it for rinsing stuff.
Like distilled water. Isn't that the stuff you put in like an ion?
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't come from the faucet.
No, distilled water does not come from the faucet. When you unplug things, don't yank the cord, basically. And also, don't have wet hands.
Oh.
Examine glassware before each use. Never use chipped or cracked glassware. And never use dirty glassware. If it's chipped or cracked, that creates a weak point that could cause catastrophic failure.
No.
And the glass could shatter. You don't want the glass to shatter because that can hurt. Also, if it's dirty, you don't know what's in there, and it could cause a dangerous reaction. And even if it doesn't, it's most likely going to throw off your results.
Oh, really?
Report damage to electrical equipment immediately. So if you see anything that looks like it has been worn out, let me know so that we can address that. If you do not understand how to use a piece of equipment, ask the instructor for help. And do not immerse hot glassware in cold water. It can shatter. Now, the glassware that we use, this is all what we call borosilicate glass. And it is supposed to be able to handle temperature shock. It's not perfect though. If it has any micro cracks or things like that, if you're going from very hot to very cold, it can break the glassware. So if you have hot glassware, allow it to cool slowly. Heating substances, yay. Exercise extreme caution when using a gas burner. If you have one of our burners adjusted properly, the flame is incredibly difficult to see. Okay. If you have a bright orange flame, you need to adjust it.
Oh.
Because you want a very transparent blue flame. Okay. Makes it very hard to see, so you have to be really careful. You also, once again, keep your hair back, because dipping your hair in chemicals is one thing, lighting your hair on fire is another. Okay, you don't want that to happen. It would not be a fun one though.
You have to take a shower by now.
Never leave a lit burner unattended. That goes along with the whole it's really hard to see. So you don't want a burner just going. Never leave anything that is being heated or is visibly reacting unattended. Okay. Always turn the burner or hot plate off when not in use. The hot plates we have get very hot very quickly. Okay, you will need to be careful. You'll be instructed in the proper method of heating and boiling liquids in test tubes. No, you won't, because we don't do that. Heated metals and glass remain very hot for a long time. You set aside to cool, pick up with caution. We have tongs, we have gloves, and things like that. Never look into a container that is being heated.
You know somebody's done every single one of them.
Absolutely. Somebody has done every single one of these 55 things, and that's why we have rules about them. Do not place hot apparatus directly on the lab desk. Use an insulating pad. Okay. And allow it to cool. And 55, we are not going to be bending glass.
That's kind of fun, though.
It is kind of fun, actually, but we're not going to do it.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah. So that's lab safety. Okay. This is a contract. Basically, there's a couple questions. Do you wear contact lenses? Are you colorblind, or do you have any allergies?
What kind of allergy?
Like allergy. Like I don't need to know if you sneeze in the springtime.
Like allergies to like medication?
If the school already has your allergies on file, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell them that there was an incident, and then yeah. But yeah, you don't need to really worry about allergies. Anyway, so if you sign that and have your parents sign it, I'll give you some free points. So, are there any questions about any of those things? I think most of them are pretty straightforward, you know. Wait a second. You have a question?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay.
What's the date?
Today's the 10th. So, but yeah, so that's where we will finish up for today. And your only homework is get that signed by a parent or guardian. And also, if you're missing anything, work on that. You may also want to take some time over the weekend to look at the study guide for the test. Also go over those calculations that that we worked on last time.
It's the shorthand.
That calculation sheet, it's also on the LMS class wall. So if you struggled with it, you may want to print off a clean copy and try it again after we went over.